Back in our calculator, we can already start thinking about data containers we might need in there. And there, one value that immediately comes to my mind when thinking about a calculator is the result. So we can create a result variable with let, so with this special let keyword, which JavaScript understands, and then give it any name you want, like result or current result. Now, regarding the name of your variable or constant, there are a couple of rules and recommendations you should keep in mind. There are certain allowed and not allowed names. So allowed is this name, for example, username, written like this. And it's a best practice to use this special naming convention, which is called camel case, which means that your name starts with a lowercase character and is only one word. So there are no blanks in there, no white space. That would actually be forbidden. But every word inside of the word, like name here in username, starts with an uppercase character to make that more readable. So that would be a variable name which is allowed. It also is a good name because it describes what's in the variable. So here we would probably store the name of a user. So that's a better name than what the user entered, because it might not be clear if what the user entered should be a username or a password. So you want to give the variable a name that describes which kind of data you're storing in there. By the way, also important, JavaScript is case sensitive. And this means that it really matters whether a character is a capital character or not. So username, written the way it's written here on the left with a lowercase u at the beginning and then the uppercase n in there, is not the same as if it were written with an uppercase u at the beginning and otherwise the same. So the casing in the names you choose really matters, and that's important to keep in mind. Now, also allowed would be a name like this. It's basically similar to the first example, but this also includes a digit because your variable names can be made up of any letters or digits. You can also use the $sign special character, and your variable name can even start with it. You can use it anywhere in the variable name, but it can even start with it. Similarly, you can also use the underscore character at the beginning of your variable name or anywhere inside of it, so that's also allowed. Now, there are a couple of names which are not allowed or not recommended. For example, username like this. This is actually allowed, but it's a bad practice. You should use this camel case notation on the left with lowercase starting character, one word, and each word inside of the word starting with the uppercase character. So here, what you see there is actually another convention called snake case, which you have in some other programming languages like Python, but not in JavaScript. So whilst this technically would be a valid name, you can use an underscore here. Whilst this would be a valid name, it's not recommended. Instead, use the version on the left. Now, what's not recommended, but more importantly, not allowed, is, for example, a variable name like this. Whilst I did say that you can use any name that uses letters or digits, you must not start with a digit. So your variable name or your constant name, and everything I explain here is true for constants created with the const keyword as well, these variables and constants must not start with a digit. Now, there also are special rules when it comes to special characters. You can use $sign and underscore at the beginning of your variable or anywhere in your variable, but you must not use other special characters, neither at the beginning of your variable nor anywhere else. So dashes or white space is not allowed. The underscore is allowed, as mentioned on the left, but other special characters are not allowed no matter where you plan on using them. And the last important thing you should keep in mind, in this course you will learn about a couple of keywords, like let and const. And using these keywords as names is also not allowed, because how would JavaScript be able to find out whether you want to use the keyword here or your variable? Right? It wouldn't, and therefore this is not allowed. So now that we know what's allowed and what's not allowed, let's go back to our code and write some good code. So I got the current result variable, and now we could write the variable just like this. Now in JavaScript, you don't have to initialize this variable with a value, so you can leave it like this. So now it's an uninitialized variable. You could also say, and that's a term you will hear in other programming languages as well, this variable is now declared. The program, JavaScript, is now aware of its existence, but it's not initialized or defined yet. It has no value yet, or no value set by you. So you can leave it like this, and sometimes this is just what you need. Sometimes you have certain variables where you don't really need a starting value. For the result, however, I'd like to have one, and therefore I'll add an equal sign, and then set an initial value which could be 0 here, the number 0. And I'm using a number here because, of course, I want to use this variable in some calculations later and add numbers, deduct numbers, and so on. And therefore, having a number here with which we can do mathematical operations makes a lot of sense. Now, to conclude our first line of JavaScript code we write, let's see how we end this line. We could end it like this and just go to the next line to write the next piece of code. But you'll also often see code where we use a semicolon to finish off this line. Now in JavaScript, using the semicolon is generally optional. I'm saying generally because there are some very rare niche cases where it's not optional, but you can avoid these cases typically, and hence you can write JavaScript code without semicolons. And you'll see certain tutorials or guides which actually recommend that you don't add a semicolon. Ultimately, it's up to you whether you want to end each line of code, and that's not just the case for variable definitions, but for any code you write basically, whether you want to end these lines with semicolons or not. I personally like to do it also because there are many other programming languages where it's mandatory to use a semicolon, and it's easier to switch to those if you're used to adding it, but you can also avoid it and just use a new line to, well, write a new expression. It's up to you, just whatever you use, you should then stick to it and be consistent. So I will go with semicolons, not just here, but throughout the rest of the course, but it is up to you.